A game? You're saying this murder case is a game? What's the matter with you? I asked Kirigiri, who was sitting on the armchair. There are a few things I have to confirm. She didn't answer my question and went on. It'll be faster for me to investigate on my own, but you won't let me loose, right? No, I said categorically. Emotionally speaking, I don't think she's the murderer. To be more precise, I don't want to think of her as the murderer. But no matter how I think about it, logically speaking, the only possible murderer is her. As a detective, I can't go against logic. If you need to investigate anything, then I'll replace you, for your eyes, hands, and feet. Is that all right? Fine. What to investigate first? Investigate the luggage of those who were killed. If possible, bring the bags of Amino-san and Inuzuka-san. Bags, huh? As she said, I went to the rooms of Amino and Inuzuka and wandered around, trying not to look at their bodies. I put Amino's briefcase and Inuzuka's suitcase in front of Kirigiri. The suitcase is extremely heavy, causing sweat to seep slightly on my forehead. That's all? Look into Amino-san's bag. I opened Amino's briefcase and rummaged through it. Inside were 2 files with unknown writing on them, an English conversation textbook, handkerchiefs, cigarettes, a lighter, and a wallet. Then there was a black envelope in the side pocket. What's in the envelope? Kirigiri asked. A letter of commission. I checked the envelope and said, the contents are the same as the letter we both received, only the name of the recipient is different. Anything else? Nope. Is that so? Kirigiri closed her lips tightly, lost in thought. It would be better to investigate the other luggage as well, but I can draw a conclusion for the time being. What'd you think of? It's the other letter of commission that Yui Onisama showed me just now. No, it should be a challenge letter. It seems that only Yui Onisama received it. A challenge letter? You mean this? She's talking about the letter that began with a message to the detective. It turns out that no one else received this letter. It wasn't in Amino-san's luggage, right? I haven't received it either, Kirigiri said. In this case, Yui Onisama has been chosen to play the role of the detective. I got the detective role? That's right, Kirigiri said calmly and faintly. It's just like what the letter said. The event that's happening here now is the event foreshadowed in the challenge letter. Yui Onisama is the detective who should solve this incident. Wait a minute, you mean if I remembered this challenge letter sooner, then this incident could have been prevented? I suppose so. No, wait, that's... In other words, I didn't notice the provocation of the murderer at all, and just let the murders happen? If I'd been a little more perceptive, if I'd been more cautious, if my abilities as a detective were better, maybe I could have prevented this incident from happening. Maybe those 3 people wouldn't have had to die. Those 3 people. 3 lives I've left to die, even though they had little to do with me. And all 3 were detectives. 3 people who were working to correct the injustices of this world. My hands are shaking. It's like I killed them. When you think about it this way, this puzzling situation is understandable. When I woke up just now, the first thing that came to my mind was why I wasn't killed. Her words fully reveal the distorted humanness of the young girl, Kirigiri Kyoko. She so naturally accepts that there is nothing special about death. In her life, death always accompanies her. I felt a slight chill on my body when I thought about what kind of twists and turns this young girl, who's still a middle school student, must have gone through to reach this point. Although there were many opportunities to kill me, why did the murderer keep me alive? The reason is that I'm the one who has to play the role of the murderer. So you are don't get me wrong. In the end, this is just a role assigned to me by someone else. Yui Onisama is the one who will point out the one playing as the murderer, and I'm the one who should be identified. That's how it's arranged. In other words, you're a substitute murderer arranged by the real murderer? Yes. That makes no sense. It doesn't make sense that a challenge letter exists. What exactly is the benefit of sending such a letter beforehand to anticipate the crime that will be committed? And what even is the role of the detective? From the culprit's perspective, there's usually no need for any detective role. That's why I think it's a game. I still don't get it. Are you saying the killing is a game? To be more accurate, a killing game where the culprit challenges the detective. How can that be? Considering the existence of the challenge letter and the reason for keeping us both alive, one can only assume so. You mean this is a crime of passion? I suppose that's what it is. So what you're trying to say is that this current situation is a real-time reasoning game set up by the culprit to challenge me? Yes. How can I believe that? This is so baffling. I denied it. Why me of all people? Out of a total of 65,500 detectives, why must I be the target? Maybe it's a challenge to all detectives, or to the existence of detectives altogether. Kirigiri narrowed her eyes, shook her head, and ruffled her hair that was resting next to her cheek. She now looked as if she had accepted the murderer's challenge, with the look of having made up her mind. I see. Even if what's happening here is a game set by the murderer, how can the mystery in this case be solved? You're still the only suspect, and this point remains the same. At this time, from my point of view, I'm not the murderer, and Yui Oni-sama is not the murderer either. Because the touch of your hand just now was obviously different from that of the murderer. So then, the murderer is someone else. We've done many investigations here so far, and there is no one else but us. No, Yui Oni-sama. We haven't finished investigating yet. Is there anything else we haven't investigated? There are no secret rooms or secret passages here. Everyone confirmed that before losing consciousness. In addition, there are no signs of anyone coming in or out on the snow around the building. The entrance door and all windows are locked from the inside. Even if someone holds a backup key to the entrance, there's no trace of anyone coming in or out of the automatic door, so we can deduce that no one else has ever entered or exited. If someone other than Kirigiri is the murderer, where did this person come from and where did they disappear to? Could it be that they flew out through the automatic door in a hot air balloon? Or did they shrink into the size of a bottle and hide in a refrigerator? None of this is possible. There's something I want to confirm first, Kirigiri said. Regarding the condition of the dead bodies, Yui Oni-sama has already told me that their necks were severed, but the challenge letter says dismemberment. Does that mean we should go investigate the dead bodies again? She's saying that not only the necks, but also the limbs were cut off. Remove my handcuffs and let me investigate, Kirigiri said. No, you just sit here and I'll do it. Check carefully. The dead bodies will tell you exactly how they were cut. I know. That being said, how could a normal person investigate a dismembered corpse? This kind of thing can only be done by detectives whose first digit is 9. But I can't move forward if I don't. If the challenge letter was really directed to me, then I must accept the challenge. I decided to investigate the first corpse I found, the one with Amino's head. The smell of blood is still permeating the entire room, making me want to vomit. I covered my nose with my sleeve and approached the corpse. The blanket was still turned over, revealing the severed side of the head and torso. I lifted up the blanket a little more. The torso of this corpse seems to have belonged to Enby. I remember that black vest. The physique is also very muscular, which leads me to believe that the clothes were not the only thing that got swapped. Also, the arms were cut from the shoulder. At first glance, it looked like they were connected to the torso, but in fact they're just placed close to the cut edges. And it's not just that. The 2 arms are each cut into 3 sections, from the shoulder to the elbow, from the elbow to the wrist, and then the hand below the wrist. He really was dismembered. I took a few steps backwards in place and fell on the ground. How could I stay standing after witnessing such a scene? I resisted the urge to scream out, barely squeezed out my strength, and stood up. If this kind of vicious crime is happening to challenge detectives, then I must come out of it victorious. Because detectives must fight for justice. I gritted my teeth and checked the body again. It seems that the arms were split into 3 sections. Each part has been replaced with a different person's corresponding part. The sleeves wrapped around it, the original color of the skin, etc., are not the same. This creepy difference is hard to conceal. It looks like the clothes were cut along with the body, so I can barely tell which part belonged to which person. The upper arm should be Amino's, and the lower arm should be Enbi's. If you think of it according to the rule of elimination, the hand should be Inuzuka's. Both arms have been switched around like a puzzle. What's even more frightening is that both legs were also split into 3 sections and switched, seemingly in the same order as the arms. The body was chopped into a total of 14 parts. I staggered all the way back to the hall while covering my mouth. Kirigiri, sitting in the armchair, seemed to have expected this reaction from me. Her expression was very casual. "Just like you said," I choked up. "Why did this happen? It's so crazy. If this really is a game..."
"What was the condition of the body?"
Kirigiri was indifferent to me. Her interest lied only in the corpse. I collapsed on the floor of the hall and described to her what I just saw.
"Is that so? It looks like this incident is more brutal than I thought."
"You think so?" I said, staring at Kirigiri's face. "What in the world is going on? Why are people being dismembered like this?"
"If we refer to the challenge letter that Oni-sama received, then the dismembered body should have something to do with the technique of the crime, right?"
"Technique of the crime?"
"We can assume that the murderer cut the bodies apart for some special reason."
"The reason for dismembering the bodies?"
"Although there are various reasons, in most cases, it's for the convenience of transportation."
"Transportation?" Did she mean to say that this would make it easier to move the bodies to the beds? Indeed, moving the body of an adult man weighing more than 60 kilograms is not an easy task. But if the bodies were split into so many small pieces, they would be a lot easier to move.
"Go check the dead bodies in the other rooms."
Kirigiri gave me instructions. Although I really want to say, "Go do that yourself," I promised her that I'd be the one investigating, so I had to stick to it. I went into the next room to inspect the body there. It appears that the head belonged to Enbi, and the body was Inuzuka's. Sure enough, the corpse was also cut into 14 parts, with the arms and legs being placed in the order of Enbi, Inuzuka, then Amino, from top to bottom. In addition, the dog tag that Enbi was wearing around his neck was left next to the corpse. I picked it up and confirmed that it had Enbi's name in Roman letters. After inspecting 2 dismembered corpses, I can already imagine the horrible condition of the third corpse, even without looking at it. However, I still have to see it with my own eyes. I leaned my body against the wall and moved to the next room. I examined the third corpse in this room. The head was Inuzuka's, and the body was Amino's. From top to bottom, the arms and legs belonged to Inuzuka, Amino, and Enbi. With this, I've examined all 3 bodies. But apart from knowing that these corpses were dismembered, nothing new has been discovered. I still don't know the cause of death for each of them, and with my autopsy skills, I can't determine the approximate time of their death. However, there did not seem to be any signs of heavy bleeding, and the blood that was shed only stained the bed sheets black and red. So can I assume that they were cut up after death? I should consider that the murder weapon used to cut the bodies was the gardening shears. The corpse's cutting step was all performed on the beds, as evidenced by the fact that I found several tears on the bed sheets. I returned to the hall to report to Kirigiri. I am a detective, but for now, I'm assigned to basically run errands like an assistant for the armchair detective.
"I understand the situation,"
Kirigiri said in a calm voice. The fact that a girl 3 years younger than me could be this calm made me feel a shiver.
"There's one more thing I want to confirm,"
Kirigiri said, as if urging me. "May I ask what it is this time, detective lady?"
"Press that switch."
Kirigiri turned her gaze to a certain point on the wall. There was the switch used to open and close the dome. Right, I forgot to investigate that. I meant the roof. If the 6th character, the uninvited guest, is there, after killing the 3 detectives, that person might have opened the dome and escaped through the roof of the building. Moreover, they might still be hiding on it. I opened the cabinet installed in the wall and pressed the switch. Accompanied by the sound of the engine, the concave mirror roof slowly opened. The wind and snow poured in immediately. It's already past midnight, and from the gap in the dome,
I could only see the deeper darkness outside. I waited for the dome to open to a certain extent, and then released the switch.
Can you investigate the top of the roof?
Kirigiri said while shaking her head to shake off the snow that had fallen on her head. It's a bit high, I said while holding my arms, but I may be able to climb up there. I dragged the round table that's placed in the center of the hall and leaned against the wall. Then I climbed onto the round table and took a long jump towards the opening of the dome, where it was originally the dividing line between the ceiling and the wall. Just enough. My fingers that barely touched the top hooked onto the edge of the wall. While opening and closing the dome, this edge is the section where the left and right sides of the slide are divided. With that, I barely supported my body and spent some time and effort climbing up along the edge.
Amazing!
Kirigiri used an exclamatory voice.
You have a great jumping ability.
The jumping power of my legs is the source of my pride. I once broke the record for vertical jumping for high school girls. I tried my best and finally climbed on the edge of the open roof. Unfortunately, my physical strength is not as good, so the 2 legs that I'm proud of aren't enough for me to perform well in sports. If some athletic competition had been held at that time, maybe I could have been able to go to Hope's Peak Academy. Just kidding. I chose the path of the detective, and the 2 legs I'm proud of have nothing to do with detective abilities. But today, these 2 legs came in handy for the first time. I stared into the darkness with snowflakes, and then looked around. Unfortunately, I didn't find any sign of the murderer, not even a trace of a person climbing on the roof. All I saw was a layer of snow on the white roof, showing the shape of a star in the dark. I left a white breath in the darkness of the night and jumped off the roof to land indoors. I flicked the switch and closed the dome. Sure enough, there's no one else other than us, I said as I brushed the snow on my uniform.
Yes,
Kirigiri agreed.
There's no one on the roof. As long as we keep that in mind, Yui Onizuma's actions are valuable.
Really? That's good. My words were tinged with sarcasm. Since there's no one but us, that makes you even more suspicious.
You're at it again,
Kirigiri said, narrowing her eyes. You've confirmed enough, right? No one else is in or out of this building except for us. And the other 3 of the 5 people died. It was either you or me who killed these people.
No, we only confirmed the current situation so far. Yui Onizuma hasn't made a convincing reasoning yet.
Kirigiri looked straight up at me and said, it was the innocent face of a middle school student, and at the same time, it was undoubtedly the face of a detective.
Let's start it off from the beginning, Onizuma, so that we can tell who the real murderer is.
Kirigiri slowly leaned back in the armchair and said, wait a minute, you already know who the real murderer is or something?
I wonder,
Kirigiri said with a rare and highly-minded smile.
Now, let's keep talking. Recall the beginning of the case.
The very beginning?
Yes. Let's start with when Yui Onizuma and the others drank the sleeping drugs.
I remember now. The challenge letter said knockout drugs.
No, sleeping drugs and knockout drugs are 2 different things. I think the knockout drugs should be the one that they sprinkled on the handkerchief and made me smell. Yui Onizuma and the others drank a sleeping agent without knowing it, which is not the same.
When exactly did we take it? I was very careful. I didn't touch anything in the refrigerator.
Didn't you drink canned coffee in the station wagon?
I couldn't help but let my voice out. The canned coffee the driver gave us before we left the vehicle. Could that have been a sleeping agent with a slower effect?
Yes, I can't think of other possibilities.
If that's true, that means the murderer is the driver?
No, the driver turned back on the mountain road. It's hard to imagine that he could sneak back or silently enter this building. No third party has ever entered or exited this place. This was confirmed by Yui Onizuma herself, correct?
Correct.
The driver followed Oe Yoshizono's instructions. Giving us canned coffee should have also been one of the instructions.
So the crime plan had already started at that time. I was so careless. If I was aware of it at that time, maybe I would have been able to prevent these crimes from happening. I bit my lip.
I think the amount of the sleeping agent was adjusted so that it doesn't take effect until we reach this building. Although I don't know why the sleeping agent is not stated in the challenge letter.
Doesn't the so-called knockout drug also include a sleeping agent?
Who knows?
Kirigiri seemed to be lost in thought, lowering her eyes.
In short, all of us have temporarily lost consciousness.
We can assume that the murders and the dismemberments happened after that.
The killings were carried out according to plan, and everything went smoothly. I can only assume that the fact that both Kirigiri and I were not killed under such circumstances was with ulterior motives. According to Kirigiri, I'm playing detective in this game, and she's playing the murderer. That's why we survived, but...
After coming here, we carefully investigated the interiors,
Kirigiri said, looking around the room.
As a result, we found that there is neither Kiba Ryuichiro nor Oe Yoshizono here, and there was no other person present.
Yeah.
And after we woke up, we investigated the interior of the building again, and still did not find any presence of a third party, and there was no trace of anyone entering or exiting this place. Yui Onisama is very sure about this, right?
Of course. I came to this conclusion based on thorough investigation.
There are only 5 of us in this building.
Yes, absolutely correct. I nodded vigorously.
The reason the murderer created the situation is to make Yui Onisama make the wrong reasoning. And it should be correct to think so, because Yui Onisama will definitely identify me as the murderer, right?
Other than you, I can't think of anyone else.
Is that so? Since that's the case, I'll refute you,
Kirigiri said in a calm tone.
The murderer is not me. Someone other than me or Yui Onisama is.
Someone other than us is the murderer, huh? And there's no one but the 5 of us here. You already said that, right?
Yes.
But you still say that someone other than the 2 of us is the murderer?
Yes.
Does that mean... Is the murderer among the 3 who have already died?
Yes.
How can that be? It doesn't make sense no matter how you think about it. Those 3 people were dismembered, right? In this case, it's impossible to play dead. Or did one of the 3 people commit suicide? The body was dismembered and all the parts were switched, so that possibility disappeared. Besides the 3 dead guys, there was another person who mixed the dismembered parts as if playing a jigsaw puzzle. There's no doubt about that.
Yes, the question is, who was that person?
It wasn't me.
I know. First, we should think about the mystery of the body dismemberment. Why were the bodies cut into 14 parts? And why did the murderer switch each dismembered part?
How is it possible to understand such a thing? No matter how you look at it, it's the work of a mentally unstable person motivated by curiosity, right? Are you saying that the murderer dismembered the body and switched the parts for some rational reason?
Yes, that's it.
Really? That can't be.
No. If you calm down and think about it, you will understand immediately.
Calm down and... Kirigiri said that the bodies were dismembered for easy transportation. In that case, does this statement also apply? Transporting them? Where to move them from? A sudden thought occurred to me.
There's a simple answer that can solve all mysteries, isn't there?
Kirigiri said. If the murderer is among the dead, if that person neither played dead nor committed suicide, then he must have prepared a dead body double. How did he get a dead body double? He had to bring it in from outside. How did he do that? By dismembering the body, of course. Are you trying to say that someone dismembered a 6th person and moved him into this building as his body double?
We can only assume so.
But such a thing is impossible. Because I've already checked the faces of all the bodies. The 3 dead people are undoubtedly the 3 detectives I saw earlier today. The ones who died are Amino-san, Enbi-san, and Inuzuka-san.
That means one of them was an imposter. The murderer killed a detective beforehand and dismembered him. Then he dressed up exactly like that detective and appeared in front of us.
An imposter? Any more of this is too ridiculous. Didn't we all take out our cards with photos to see each other? You have to be an expert at disguise to look like someone else, unless he's a detective with superb makeup skills. This kind of thing is absolutely impossible. To have the murderer actually be a detective and also very good at disguise, it's too coincidental.
No, that's not the case. There's a simpler way to get exactly the desired disguise. You can just go to the detective library and pick a detective who looks exactly like you.
That's how. If that detective originally looked a lot like the murderer, then he could have been easily impersonated by him. There are more than 65,000 detectives registered in the detective library. It may not be that difficult to find a detective who looks like you. The murderer killed the detective beforehand, then took his detective library registration card and impersonated him in front of us. Then the murderer moved the dismembered body to this place without our knowledge. The sixth uninvited guest was actually with us the whole time. But even if he moved the body in after dismembering it, why did the murderer exchange the dismembered parts of the body? It's hard to imagine what the significance of that is.
No, for the murderer, there was a very good reason to do so.
A good reason?
That is, the first reason is convenient to store it in places after dismemberment. You should be able to imagine that, right?
Yes.
The second reason is the livor mortis problem. After death, the blood circulation in the body stops, and the blood gets deposited on the downward side of the corpse under the effect of gravity. As the blood deposits, the surface of the skin will appear speckled or mesh-like. Especially with the passage of time, the livor mortis will become more and more obvious.
Yeah, I know that. It's just that I didn't expect to hear such a detailed explanation from a middle school student. As expected of a detective numbered 9, she can even talk about this kind of nauseating topic so casually.
The murderer killed a detective beforehand as his body double. Of course, this was before we came here to gather. In other words, that body had a longer time after death than the other bodies. If the murderer directly put out this body as his own double, in that case, others may be able to tell from livor mortis that there's a certain interval between the approximate time of death of this body and the other ones. So the murderer drained the blood from the corpse beforehand. A dismembered corpse should be easier to handle.
If there's no blood in the body, there'll be no livor mortis.
Yes. Although the body won't have livor mortis in this way, another problem arose. That is, the bloodstains at the murder scene. If you wanted the body to look like it was killed on the scene, it must be bloody. However, the actual amount was too little.
In this case, what about preparing some blood bags in advance? I said what I thought of. Or to store the blood drawn and then use it later. I got a little nauseous talking to myself. I gritted my teeth to restrain the dizziness I was feeling.
No, that's not necessary, because the blood can be obtained in the scene.
Obtained from the other victims?
In any case, the murderer had already planned to prepare the bodies of 3 people. 1 corpse beforehand, and 2 corpses inside this building. Of course, the people killed in this building must also be dismembered. It'd be too unnatural if only the body that was impersonated was dismembered.
That means he dismembered the other victims in order to ensure that the body double thing wasn't seen through. Let's just pretend that all that's true. Why did he need to switch to the dismembered parts?
If he placed the corpse serving as his body double on the bed in the original order, then that would be an unnatural situation, just like the blood situation. The corpse that served as the body double would bleed significantly less than the other bodies. Even the sheets wouldn't get soiled, so it wouldn't look like they were killed on that spot.
Oh. So the killer mixed those body parts with those of the people who were killed on the spot to make us believe that all 3 were dismembered on the beds, right?
That's right. In this way, the blood oozing from the cuts and the bloodstains on the bed sheets wouldn't look unnatural. I think the murderer did cut the bodies separately on the 3 beds. And this was to create the fact that the dismemberment was done right here.
Yeah. There were cut marks on the sheets. I never suspected that at all. Putting the edges of the cuts of the bodies close together might be to conceal the facts, in case someone sees that there is no bleeding body parts mixed in.
How about it? Yui Onisama should also be able to understand how the body was dismembered, right?
Yeah, almost. I'm not too sure. Let me summarize. Listen to it. First of all, the murderer dismembered the body that served as his body double for easy transportation. He also drained the blood from the body. So the fact that this body was killed beforehand wouldn't be exposed, and there will be no livor mortis. Then, after knocking us out in the Sirius Observatory, he killed the other 2 detectives and dismembered them. At that time, in order not to be noticed, he mixed the body serving as his body double with the other dismembered bodies, eliminating the unnatural traces. I glanced at Kirigiri's expression, as if asking for her opinion. She nodded slightly. But what about the most important part? The murderer? I looked around. Is the murderer now gulping nervously, listening to our reasoning?
No one has ever been in or out of the building. That means the murderer is still in the building.
Kirigiri lifted her body from the backrest and assumed a somewhat wary look. Didn't we search everywhere in this building? We haven't seen the murderer at all. We even searched the roof.
If you think about where the murderer would hide the body, you'll naturally know the answer to this question. After the murderer took the body parts out of it, the place would get empty. Then, the murderer would be able to hide in it himself, right? I've said a lot. You should be able to figure out the rest, Yui Onisama.
Where did the murderer hide the body? How did the murderer transport the body to the Sirius Observatory? That's right. The murderer brought in the body that served as his double in small pieces in a bag. I just need to remember the kind of bag that everyone carried. Amino's is the kind of briefcase that office workers often carry. Enby's is a small Boston bag. Then Inuzuka's is a large suitcase. A few minutes ago, at the order of Kirigiri, I had brought it from Inuzuka's room. I remember that suitcase was extremely heavy. If the suitcase originally contained a body, then the person who brought the suitcase is the murderer. The murderer is Inuzuka Ko. No, to be precise, it should be someone pretending to be Inuzuka. He stuffed the body that served as his double into a suitcase, pretended to be Inuzuka, and then came to the Sirius Observatory with us casually. Thinking about it carefully, perhaps the so-called observation ability he showed in front of me was originally because he'd already investigated me in advance. Then after putting the body in place, he hid himself in the suitcase. I see. Kirigiri-chan, I'm really sorry that I suspected you all this time.
Have I finally been cleared of suspicion?
Yes. The murderer is right here. I took a few steps backwards to make room for a run-up. The murderer is you! Inuzuka! I gave the suitcase a nice flying kick, and the suitcase was sent flying. I immediately took advantage of the situation and planted my foot on the suitcase that had fallen to the ground. Then I reached down and opened the zipper. The suitcase opened. Inside the suitcase was not Inuzuka. The suitcase was filled with bottles of whiskey, vodka, and various other colors of alcohol. Huh? What's going on? The murderer was supposed to be hiding here.
What are you doing, Onisama?
Kirigiri looked at me with helpless eyes. No, because didn't the murderer move the body using this after dismembering it and served as his double? In that case, no matter how you think about it, Inuzuka with the largest bag is the murderer. The bags carried by the other two people can't be used to carry the corpse. Huh? What's happening? No matter how I think about it, the briefcase and Boston bags can't hold a dead body. But I was very optimistic that the suitcase only contained liquor bottles. Now that I recall, Inuzuka himself did say that it contained liquor. That means no one brought the body in? I couldn't help but cast a suspicious look at Kirigiri Kyoko. Was her previous reasoning all lies to deceive me?
You don't still think I'm the murderer, do you?
Kirigiri seemed to see through my mind. Because your reasoning is complete nonsense. The body was moved here after being dismembered, huh? Who did it and how? To move a person's body in, it should at least be in a bag as big as the suitcase, right? But in fact, there's only liquor bottles in it. No one brought any body in it.
My reasoning is not nonsense.
Kirigiri's face didn't change at all.
Think about it again. Even if the dismembered body can fit inside the suitcase, could someone as tall as Inuzuka-san really fit inside the...
Well, no.
I think the bottles in the suitcase were indeed brought by Inuzuka-san.
Then who do you think it was, and what method did he use to bring in the corpse as a double?
I think the murderer just brought it in by car in a normal way.
What?
For example, he just drove the car here in the morning before the snow had accumulated.
I completely overlooked that.
The victim who was used as a double by the murderer should have been called before us. Then the murderer killed him and dismembered him. However, I think the murder scene was not here. Because if the murderer killed the victim here in advance, it's very likely that some traces will be left and might get noticed by the other detectives.
Right. But the murderer moved the body in before we came. Don't you think this reasoning is a bit forced? After we arrived here, we conducted a careful investigation of all the rooms immediately, but we didn't see any body at the time.
Because the body was cleverly hidden.
Hidden? But hidden where? As I said, we investigated everywhere. There were no bodies. Could it be that it was buried in the snow outside? That would still leave traces.
The answer is very simple,
Kirigiri said briefly, and then continued.
But before telling you the truth, I have one thing I want to ask you.
Kirigiri looked up at me and said, What is it?
I want you to believe that I am not the murderer.
Kirigiri's expression was more serious than ever. And she had that kind of expression as if she was pleading me, something I'd never seen before. Of course I would love to believe her, except that, what if everything was a lie? What if the final step of her criminal plan is to kill me? It's difficult for me to believe her by emotions alone. However, I've come to believe that she has the ability to reason well enough to break through this madness. She has the talent of a detective.
If you believe me, then untie the ribbon on my right hand. Just the right hand is enough.
What exactly is she planning to do? I have no idea. But I decided to believe in her anyway. As a detective. I untied her right hand.
Thanks.
It was then that I saw Kirigiri's cute smile for the first time. Or at least I thought so. Because her expression lacked change, it was probably just my imagination.
Then, bring Amino-san's bag over here.
Kirigiri made a request. And as she said, I handed the briefcase that was on the ground to her, and she placed it on her lap.
Then bring Inuzuka-san's suitcase here.
Okay. I dragged the suitcase that I kicked away earlier to the front of the armchair. Is this okay, detective lady?
Yes, it's perfect.
A slight blush seemed to have risen on Kirigiri's face. And then what? Was the body really hidden somewhere when we got here?
Yes. If you think back, there was one place we didn't even investigate. It's no wonder since we didn't expect any dismembered corpses at that time.
No. I, the person who received the challenge, should have expected it. If I found all that out earlier, things might not have turned out like this, and I felt a million regrets at the thought of that. What exactly is that place?
It's inside the astronomical telescopes.
Huh? Inside the telescopes?
There's a 200mm aperture Newtonian reflecting telescope in each of the 5 rooms. As long as you know its structure, you should be able to find the place where this corpse was hidden.
Impossible. How could the body even be put inside an astronomical telescope? Even if it can be put in, it will be discovered immediately. The telescope is originally a hollow structure. I suddenly remembered Inuzuka's explanation of reflecting telescopes. There's a concave mirror deep inside the large cylinder, which passes through the reflector and forms an image on the objective lens. Does that mean... What if someone moved that deep concave mirror forward? Wouldn't that create a secret space inside the cylinder of the astronomical telescope?
You're figuring it out. If it's a cylinder with a diameter of 200mm, you can put a human head in it. The width of the male head is about 160mm at most, and the limbs, each split into 3 sections, are not that big and can perfectly fit. The murderer hid the head, left arm, left leg, and right leg, 5 parts in total, in the 5 astronomical telescopes.
The body was actually hidden in there. But I looked through the lens.
And you shouldn't have been able to look properly through it. Because the position of the concave mirror was moved, the focus won't be aligned.
You're right. I hardly saw anything with it.
If someone who knew a lot about celestial telescopes looked inside the cylinder, maybe they would have noticed that the concave mirror was not in the right position. But there was no one among us who noticed that.
Inuzuka seemed to have some knowledge of this, but he didn't realize this fact. I wonder if it was because his memory about it was from a long time ago, or because he didn't expect an incident to happen at all. Kirigiri-chan, you didn't notice it then?
Yes, I just glanced at the lens when I first entered the room. I thought the unadjusted lens was like this originally.
That ability of yours didn't work?
I can hear the footsteps of the Shinigami only when a crisis is approaching.
There's no way to do that for someone who's already turned into a corpse. I let out a long sigh. Wait, what about the torso? Where was the largest part of the 6 parts hidden? There are no other astronomical telescopes.
The torso was hidden in a place, and that place is now where the murderer is hiding.
The murderer?
Yes.
But I don't think there's any place to hide the body.
No, there actually is another place,
Kirigiri said in a tone that seemed a little happy.
You just have to think about it. It's a small space where you can barely hide your torso. Even if you remove the corpse from there, the only people who could hide in there would be very small in stature.
Yes, but among the people who came here, there are hardly any people of small stature, and you're the smallest one.
No, there are actually people smaller than me.
There's no such person.
As far as I can see, he does indeed exist.
Who exactly are you thinking of? And also, where's that person hiding now? As long as you find him out, things will be clear. Just say it.
Yes, all right,
Kirigiri said, then extended her right hand and took out an alcohol bottle from Inuzuka's suitcase. After opening the bottle cap, while I was trying to figure out what she was thinking, she started pouring alcohol on her skirt near her thigh. The pungent smell of alcohol quickly permeated the surroundings. Hey, what are you doing? The parts below her waist were soaked in alcohol. Next, Kirigiri took out the lighter from Amino's bag. Kirigiri-chan!
This is vodka with 96% alcohol. After soaking the cloth like this, it should be easy to ignite.
Kirigiri expressionlessly held the lighter in her right hand. Her actions looked to me like a sign of insanity. What are you thinking?
Igniting it?
Stop! What's the point of doing this kind of thing? If she really flicked the grinding wheel of the lighter, she might ignite the vaporized alcohol in that instant. In that case, her clothes soaked in alcohol would immediately burn. They won't end in just slight burns. She'd be incinerated. I was completely confused as to why she would do such a thing.
I'm serious. In order to identify the murderer, you have to put your life on the line. That's what Grandpa taught me.
What are you talking about, Kirigiri-chan? Stop!
And I was ready to give up my life for the truth from the very beginning,
she said in a chilling voice. At this time, her eyes were a grayness that saw through death. Kirigiri's thumb pressed the lighter's grinding wheel.
Stop! I'll light it in 5 seconds.
5. 4. I approached her. I could only kick her right hand to knock the lighter away. 3.
Onisama, don't make a sound and watch carefully.
I was stopped by her. 2. I couldn't help but stop in my tracks. 1. I surrender. Suddenly, a male voice came from nowhere. I looked everywhere with my eyes. Nobody. Your reasoning is correct, and I have nothing left to argue with. Whose voice is that anyway?
Then, please come out from there, Enbi-san.
The handcuffs on Kirigiri's left hand hadn't been opened yet, so she stood up from the armchair and sat back. Does that mean that he's inside the armchair? The armchair began to move slightly. Then the zipper on the back of the cushion opened, revealing Enbi in a tank top. No, it was a fake Enbi. In any case, it's impossible for an adult man's body to fit into such a small chair. Could it be that the cushion is connected to an interdimensional space? With such thoughts, I looked at Enbi carefully. Both of his legs ended at the middle of the thighs, and there's nothing underneath. In the past, I lost both legs because of burns, and they still hurt, even now.